Good evening, one and all. Welcome along to Season 3, Episode 34 of the UK Dallas Cowboys podcast. Tonight I'm joined by Rich and by Lauren to discuss the Cardinals games. How are we both doing, gentlemen?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad now that we've had time to digest it.
Rich is drinking. There's trouble ahead.
Says it all. Right. Why are we going to put that kind of energy out there straight off the bat now, right? Come on now.
This is true. I have got a message in from someone saying that from Alan, where's the video? So I'm not sure if there's an issue, or if people are seeing us on Facebook. If you are, can you just drop us a quick message and let us know? If you can't see the video, switch over to our Twitter page and you should be able to grab us there, or switch over to YouTube. We should be live on YouTube. So just let us know.
Surely if they can't see it, they wouldn't have heard you say that.
That's true. And we do have 4 people. We do have 4 people viewing us. So look, let's see. Oh yeah, Andy Minet has come in and said, "Yeah, we can see you." So happy days. That's good to know, folks. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry for your loss.
So, gentlemen, as always, we lost 25-22 at the weekend, 11-5. We've dropped to the 4th ranking in the NFC. Give us your initial thoughts on Sunday's performance.
Defense, I thought, played very well, albeit they didn't get any turnovers. Offense, I mean, I was saying to you earlier, I mean, did Kellen Moore even go back and look at the Denver Broncos game from 2017? Because that defense that Vance Joseph was putting out was exactly the same as back in that game. Almost to the stats as well in terms of what we saw with Zeke Elliott rushing. And then, you know, our offensive line, I know we're going to be blasting them, but I mean, you know, that was a fairly substandard performance by them.
Go on, Rich.
Yeah, I think we need to sort of go back to where we began, right at the beginning, sort of after the draft, or even before the draft, where we said basically, if we get to the playoffs, generally that's about as great as we can expect, given where they were last year, especially with the defense. To have done that in 1 year and 1 turnaround through 1 draft, and actually have the defense carry them over a fair course of that, of the season, to win enough games to be able to do that, I think is a very good thing. Ultimately, I'm saying that because we all got a bit excited. Generally, with how things were going, we thought there's a chance this offense can get itself out of its rut. It did it for a game. Then whatever happened the other night happened the other night. I don't know. But they've very much shown that at the minute they can't contend with the higher level teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Or at least, if they do, it's going to be very much a case of any given Sunday. So they got a chance because they're in the playoffs, but you can say that about any playoff team. You can't sit here. Nobody can sit here and say the Cowboys are a genuine contender right now. Yeah. Can't say it honestly, hand on heart, realistically.
Yeah, I think you make a fair point. It was kind of the lead up to this game. A lot of the talk was that this is the litmus test. Are they a contender or are they just another pretender? Are we being led up the garden path by a weak division, which, as we've gone 5-0 so far against the division, and have had very few standout performances. I mean, I think the 2 best performances we had were the Patriots game, and that was, I'm struggling outside of that.
Well, I mean, they have had moments, in fairness. Yeah. The very first game against the Bucs, we were all actually coming out of that actually in a good place, feeling reasonably happy. Nobody was actually expecting them to win that game.
Yeah.
Patriots game, definitely. Those early games 100%, because the defense was playing to a much better level than we thought it was going to, especially in comparison to last year, and the offense was firing. It's exactly where we thought it was going to be. And then obviously Dak gets injured, and then from then on it's been a mystery.
Yeah, and considering we've been so hot at home this year, Denver aside, we're what 5-2 at home now, obviously Denver aside, and yes, it's the quality of the competition. We had Atlanta, we had Washington, who we blew out as well. I see they're about to. Next month, they're going to announce what their new name is, so that will all be on bated breath to see if it's copycats or scandalists,
or benches,
yeah,
which suits them perfectly.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, we've been hot at home. We've struggled on the road, which most teams do anyway. You expect to struggle on the road because it's a hostile environment. But I mean, we should be winning games on the way, and this now means that we can still get into second or third seed for depending on how things go this weekend. But if we stay in the fourth, we've got likelihood is we've got either the Rams or the Cardinals again, and then if you win that, chances are you're going to go to Green Bay from the divisional round as well. So it just makes it all that much harder to get anywhere towards the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
And the way the league is that you can be up one season, you can be back down in the doldrums the next season. So it's not a case of a window anymore. You've basically got to make the most of it all the time.
Yeah. I think Craig has kind of summed it up pretty well in saying that it's a roller coaster and just enjoy the highs and the lows will take care of themselves. But as always, folks, don't be afraid to let us know what your thoughts are on the performance at the weekend. Let us know your studs. There weren't too many, but let us know what your thoughts were on that. Let us know who your duds were. There were plenty of them, and we will discuss them. As we say, without your interaction with us, we're just three guys here sitting talking amongst ourselves. So make sure you get your comments in. But before we go much further, let's get into the news. And Paul is trying to bring us back up and say, still all things considered, we have drastically improved overall as teams last season. We have.
Yeah.
We do.
And that was my overall point. It was that I think not so much expecting, but hoping that this team goes from where it was to the Super Bowl or even just a contender really was very slim chances. But yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, over the weekend, Dan Reeves, former player and coach of the Cowboys, passed away from complications with dementia. So as always, we'd love to pass along our condolences to the Reeves family and to the wider Cowboys family on that. Michael Gallup, unfortunately, has been lost for the rest of this season as a result of an ACL tear. In better news, Blake Jarwin has been designated to return from IR, and DeMarcus Ware is a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, any of those you'd like to discuss, gentlemen?
I think the Gallup injury is obviously very distressing because it didn't even happen that his foot got stuck on the ground. It looked like it just as he took off in the air, something popped, and if the pain's shooting through his body, to actually still carry on and make that catch is quite something. Now it maybe plays into our hands a little bit that obviously it's going to be an 6 to 8 month injury, which means probably just going to be beginning of training camp, might be able to start working back in. So an ACL tear now isn't the same as 5-10 years ago, where it was still 50-50 if he'd come back 100% or not. But it might turn a few teams shy on him come the free agency season. And I mean, I know Stephen was on 105.3 this week saying the plan is still to try and get him signed to some sort of deal. The Dan Reeves situation, I mean, obviously it's really bad, particularly start of the year. You know, he makes it to New Year's Day, and then the announcement came out that it was just after the bells that it happened. Again, great coach, great player for a start for us. I mean, he threw a touchdown pass as a halfback option pass in the ice bowl. You know, he was a quarterback coming out of college. Wasn't going to cut it in the NFL as a quarterback, so he moved to running back. And you know, obviously did very well with Landry's offense. Went on to become Landry's offensive coordinator before obviously getting the chances with Denver, Atlanta, New York Giants as well. He was with as well. So, you know, and you don't. Most coaches don't get the chance of just you know, going to the Super Bowl with one team. He went to the Super Bowl with both Atlanta and Denver. So I know numerous occasions with Denver as well. Just obviously coming up short each time.
Yeah. So, Rich, DeMarcus Ware, Hall of Fame bound, first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yep. I mean, it's great for him, obviously, well deserved. There are still certain people who, due to some sort of cosmic mystery, are not being put forward for the Hall of Fame. Such as the way, I guess, pretty much. Yeah, that's what I was on about for a start. I'm sure there's others that even we are forgetting about, but it's unfortunately that does seem, even though it shouldn't be, it seems par for the course. But yeah, very well deserved. No one's surprised at it. I think everyone can really get behind that. I think if he doesn't, I'll be quite surprised, to be honest. Given his tenure and just how much of a nice guy and how well liked he is as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've seen quite a bit of DeMarcus here in the UK and Ireland. I think he's been on a lot of Sky's coverage, and he's been given, you know, some of the kind of clinics in how he played the game and technique and stuff like that. So I mean, he seems to be a guy who has a lot of great knowledge of the game and is willing to pass it on, and hopefully someday soon will make a great coach for someone. I think 100%. Is he involved in the background of the Cowboys org?
He's been involved with Micah Parsons, I believe it was. Micah Parsons went and did some work with him in the off season. So I mean, I
think he's actually more involved with Denver's. He's actually on Denver's payroll as a
consultant, is it?
Consultant. Yeah, that's the word. And I know, obviously, you saw during Hard Knocks that he is getting together with Mike Parsons and teaching him a few things. Hopefully, that continues this off season. But I don't know when you'll next see him properly on somebody's staff.
Yeah. It very much seems to be a case of, you know, he taught up Tyron Smith, and hopefully Tyron is now repaying that favour back to Micah Parsons during the season. But just something I did want to pull up here from Andy, and it's, you know, saying if someone offered us an 11 or 12 win season, that we would have snapped our hands off. I think, Andy, I think that's dead right. I think it's more, I think what all of us would like to see is this team and this organisation being a consistent 10, 11, 12 game a season winning team, not just up and down, that they're steady every year. You're winning, having a winning record, but then going in 10, 11, 12, even 13 games.
Yeah, and the bit that sort of reinforces that, and the reason that so many people get pissed off with it, is because this team is very talented. specifically on the offensive side of the ball now, obviously, which is where the majority of the issues have lain for the latter half of the season. It's extremely talented. Even with the injuries, look at what they've managed to do with the injuries throughout the season. They've got probably they've got the deepest, and I think one of, if not the best, wide receiver room. Certainly the deepest wide receiver room in the NFL.
Yeah.
They've got a great 1-2 punch at running back. They have got a serviceable, generally you'd say a serviceable offensive line. Obviously, we'll get to that in a bit. Dak is a very, very, very good quarterback. He is. There's no getting away from it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fair to say he's no Aaron Rodgers and he's no Tom Brady, but he is a very, very good quarterback.
Yeah.
You've got two actually very good tight ends that have since come out since Jason Witten's left. I think it's fair to say Dalton Schultz has pulled ahead a bit due to his his abilities over Jarwin in terms of blocking. But again, he's not perfect, and that was evident in the game. But it's too deep to be having these kinds of issues. There is still time. I mean, at the end of the day, we've still got a game left. Then we got the playoffs. At any point, they can do exactly what they did last weekend against Washington and pull their finger out and have an absolute blazer. And then all of a sudden, they go in and they win a playoff game. Everything's forgiven. Realistically, although a lot of sins are forgiven through one win in the playoffs. And if they somehow manage to get into the divisional championship game, then that's pretty much all your sins forgiven right there. And God forbid if you win it, like, it's going to be freaking insane. Now, don't get me wrong, that is going back into a very uphill battle. But there's a chance. This team is talented. The good thing is they're not in the position that other teams are, where they haven't got the people available because of COVID or injury. They just need to get the fingers out their asses and figure out what the hell's going on and fix it now. If they can do that, they are talented enough to make a deep run. Whether they do or not is a different kettle of fish. But there is still time. So we could be singing off a completely different hymn sheet in a week or two.
Yeah. And I think
the thing you always say is you've got to get to the party to stand a chance. Now, okay, we've got to the party. Can we do anything? You'd like to be hitting your stride 2, 3, 4 games out, and we thought we were last week, albeit it was against Washington. And now as they say, you can go in with the best game plan in the world. As soon as you get smacked in the mouth one time, that's it. It's can you adjust to everything? So we just didn't seem to be able to adjust.
100%. And if there's lots of arguments to be made to say, well, no one really cares about preseason. You can have a terrible preseason and everyone thinks your team's horrible. If you come out and perform well down the stretch, let alone in September or October, you perform well down the stretch. No one cares about preseason. No one really remembers preseason after it happens anyway. Everyone's just glad for it because football starts earlier. That's pretty much it. And you get to see the rookies. That's pretty much it. You get an idea of what's going to happen. No one cares about preseason. We're basically in the preseason for the playoffs right now. Now, yes, there's an argument to be made for seedings, but at the end of the day, if you want to class yourself as a Super Bowl contender, I've never really hung much on seedings. It's great if you get it. If you don't, if your plan is to win the Super Bowl and you genuinely think you're a contender and you can beat anyone, then go beat everyone. Playing an extra game or playing in someone else's house shouldn't faze you and shouldn't bother you. And I would far rather go and beat some other team. I would far rather go and beat Green Bay in Lambeau than beat them at AT&T. Because then they can't turn around and say, oh, well, it was at AT&T. You pull that off at Lambeau, that's sick. That's something that's not going to get forgotten for a very long time. So personally, anything that happens realistically right now, in the last couple of games or next weekend, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. As long as everyone's healthy and makes it into the playoffs, who gives a crap?
Yeah.
So really, the game that's just gone, yes, it's indicative of everything going forward, but who gives a crap?
Yeah.
There's one way to look at it.
I think you made this point on Sunday, Rich, after the game, is that it's better to have lost on Sunday. And
make your mistakes. Yeah, make your mistakes now. Yeah, so it's exactly the same as the preseason. You'd rather make You want to make your mistakes when it doesn't matter rather than when it does. So you want to make all your mistakes in preseason, get all that out of the way. If you're going to have any stumbling blocks earlier on in the season is better, obviously. Any kind of practice is better to get all the crap out of the way first.
Yeah. And I think as Paul is saying here, look, this time last year, the Bucs were in this position. They went on the road for their 3 games to get to the Super Bowl, which they won in their own stadium by fluke or by nature. There are a couple of comments, and I'll bring them up. And look, I think it's time we'll flip it over and let's talk. So there's comments there. And from Andy just saying, look, we'd be favoured over the Cardinals in a wild card round. We were horrendous and we only lost by 3, and tightening up a few things is very winnable.
Very true.
Which is fair. Yeah, which is very fair. I'm just gonna bring up the points here, just the statistics. So another point which has come up from Andy is he's saying that from Joe.
No, it was Joe.
Yeah, that's it. That Zeke and Cooper, we're paying them all this money. Zeke gets 9 carries and Cooper got 2 catches. Doesn't make any sense. Agreed. Lauren, I'm going to flip this over to you because you were saying this in the preamble there about Vance Joseph. The Kellen Moore didn't seem to go and watch tape of the Vance Joseph Denver Broncos game in 2017 when Zeke was totally shut down.
Yeah, I mean, as we were discussing before this episode started, I'd said earlier this week that it looked like a carbon copy of the Denver game, and it's actually quite startling. If you go and look at the stats for that Denver game in 2017, Zeke had 9 rushes for 8 yards. This game, he was 9 rushes for 16 yards. Pollard was 3 rushes for 9 yards. And I think we actually saw Dak scrambling a bit more. So he actually had 20 yards. So we got 45 yards all game. I think by crowding the line of scrimmage with all these defenders and making Dak start querying, are they coming on a zero blitz or, what's happening here? I think Dak probably checked, much like the Tampa Bay game in week 1. I think Dak checked out probably of quite a few running plays. In the hope that he could basically get a receiver coming open on a 5-yard slant or something like that. But I mean, they were just playing mind games with Dak, and it took Dak until the second half to actually adjust to what they were doing, because I mean, the number of times they looked like they were sending everybody and then they drop, as soon as the ball got snapped, 3 of them would drop back and they'd be in coverage as well. So, and they were only sending their, 5 or 6 guys. That was just, there was something that Dak, they're playing on with Dak, and it's something Vance Joseph saw back in 2017 when Dak was a second-year player. And he says, let's try this again, see if it works, and sure enough, it did work. So, but if they can take this to one side and go and sit down and deconstruct Vance Joseph's defense, I'm sure Vance won't come with this same defense again next time.
No.
But obviously the key is getting Dak to make the better reads. Because I think if we'd stuck with the run, they had the 8 or 9 up at the line of scrimmage, but all you need to do is create that little seam and somebody can get through. And if you get through that, if everybody's up on that, compressing yourself down into basically one line, and if you can get through that one line, you've got 15-20 yards before you hit the backup safety or whatever. And look, and you could be off to the races.
That's something you've led me into. I was going to mention this, is that they were playing 2 high safeties and crowding the box. And at no stage did we attempt to throw slants or throw short intermediate passes into that 5 to 10 yard window. And it just didn't make any sense. Now, Paul is making a point here, and I don't know how true or not it is that Helen Moore's holding back
glasses
on things to try to keep defenses thinking about these.
I think it's a fair point. I think this is one thing I was slightly concerned about, and I haven't mentioned or discussed it with you guys, but I was slightly concerned about the body of work that they put out there against Washington, because just how many plays they made and how much they scored and how many looks they gave. It was a fair body of work for other teams to see. So maybe there's a slight overreaction, but to be honest, even if that is the case, it doesn't excuse or explain players not executing. There were a lot of instances last night, especially with people who always execute, who didn't execute. And in terms of the passes underneath, in that mid-range that you highlighted, sorry, I got really itchy nose. They did make attempts to put the ball there. They made not enough. They made attempts. The problem was a lot of the time people weren't executed well, or they didn't know what the defense was doing. And generally, the offensive line was getting manhandled. Even on those throws, Dak was being forced to throw the ball out, get it out sooner than it needed to be, comparable to where the route was developed. And the problem was that his backup option was taken out or was covered, so he had nowhere to go. Which is why you saw a lot of incomplete passes and Dak trying to make something, putting it up to people to try and get catches, to give them chances to make plays. Don't get me wrong, he was making some off plays, but they were trying, not enough, but they did try. Just everything. It just seemed like one of those games, it was just a complete tidal wave of compounding errors in pretty much every facet of the game, bar special teams.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is that obviously we've only got what was it, going into this week, we only had 2 padded practices left. I mean, back in the 90s, when obviously Dallas were a dynasty and everything like that, these guys were still, even midweek, they were doing 2 a days, and it was 2 a days in pads. Each CBA has basically lessened the amount of practice time. It's it's lessened the physicality of the day-to-day stuff. But at the same time, that takes away, offensive line need to be hitting the defensive line every single day in practice, and not just on walkthroughs. It needs to be full strength. And yes, okay, you'll come away with injuries that everybody gets banged up and you get fingers broken or whatever, but that creates the sort of strength and gets your technique honed during the week, so that come Sunday, and especially if you're playing against a defense like ours, when it comes to Sunday, you should be playing hard again, and it should actually be easy to go up against somebody else's defense.
They definitely, I think it was a fair point that Mike made earlier on in the week in the chat amongst us. And it really struck a chord with me with what I felt. One of the things I felt with coming away from that game was in terms of how prepared they weren't. And Mike turned around and said it very much looked like, and I know there's other people on Twitter that have said exactly the same thing, other content creators. They've said it didn't look like they had really any sort of scheme to go against the Cardinals defense with. And I completely agree with that. I don't think they were prepared enough in any way, shape, or form. If you go back and watch the game again, one of the big things I came away with was that there were a lot of double and in some instances, I think, triple checkouts and audibles at the line of scrimmage. And it happened a lot. But there were audibles up the yin-yang, which to me said, they're checking out because they're not happy with the look they're getting. they never looked comfortable on offense. They never looked like they knew what they were getting. They looked like they were set, and they were like, there was just that air of discomfort, and they didn't know if they were doing the right thing, if they were in the right place, and if this was going to work, which isn't a very good place to be starting off with. So from the very start, pre-snap, they weren't looking like they were going to win in any way, shape, or form. Not offensively, anyway.
Like a lot of the comments I'm kind of seeing in, and these are coming from Joe, and I see where you're coming from on these, Joe. It's like, why does Dak look lost on some of these plays? He missed a lot of wide open receivers, and I'm beginning. He's been defending Dak all year and beginning to start to doubt him being our future. I would slightly disagree with you on that, Joe, in that, as Rich and Lauren have kind of alluded to, what Dak was seeing in the pre-snap and how the Cardinals disguised their defense, he was having to change based off of what he could see in front of him. So that's good quarterback play, because if he's just going, right, we have one call, this is what we're going to run, well, of course you're going to run right into what the Cardinals want you to do. So you have to make adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
But what also was frustrating, and Danny has kind of added into this, is that, you know, the confused Dak for most of the game, and that's what we're all saying. In these instances whereby you're getting a confusing look, that is when you just have to hand the ball off, look for a 3 or 4 yard gain in the run game, and they didn't do that. And look, 35 minutes into the show, let's have a talk about the offensive line, because this seems to be where there are a lot of problems right now with this team.
Yep.
Go on, Lon.
Well, I mean, obviously, I've said there about the practicing during the week, and again, obviously, you know, the meetings were all virtual this week. So yeah, they were practicing in shells, and then, you know, everybody has to drive home and then go and sit in front of the screen and, you know, break into the position groups on Zoom, WebEx, whatever it is. You know, it. Does the sort of camaraderie of your group translate well across these virtual terminals? What's this?
Yeah. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So Micah's just making the point here that the defense are playing against the pass a ton due to not being worried about Dallas's run game. And look, I think this is the whole point of it, is that our run game has become such a non-factor now because our O-line is not doing what it's supposed to.
Yes.
And I'm going to encapsulate this in the Dak fumble, which Isaiah Simmons made, in that Tyron Smith was standing like this. Dak was 2 yards behind him. He was blocking nobody. Connor Williams, I don't know where he was. Tyler Biadasz was on his backside.
Yep.
There was a huge gap between Biadasz and Zach Martin, which Isaiah Simmons came through, and thank God Zeke was there and picked up the block, because he would have killed Dak if he'd have hit him.
Yep.
And that, for me, shows why Zeke is paid the running back money he is, because Tony Pollard would never make that block. No. And Lyle Collins, I don't know what he was doing. So there's the issue. There's no connection across that offensive line at all. There's no communication. There's no synchronicity in the line at all. So take it away.
We also had a play where our own offense, you know, much like the one that Mike had posted at the Giants practice pre-season, where the two offensive linemen had come together and blocked each other. You know, we had that in, what was it, the Raiders game. I think it ended up that, you know, Tyron Smith blocked Connor McGovern. Yeah. And again, we had it this week. I think it was Lyle Collins this time blocked Zach Martin. You know, so there's something not happening And whether it is, again, yes, a lot of credit's been given to Joe Philbin for the job he has done on the offensive line. I would actually counter that since we went away from Mark Colombo 2 years ago, that the aggression on the offensive line hasn't been there. Yes, we've seen guys like Terence Steele coming on, and I think you could argue that Terence Steele probably does deserve to be. He's probably doing as good a job as Lyle Collins is doing. So perhaps Terence Steele should be a much cheaper alternative for Lyle Collins at right tackle. Now, is that Joe Philbin, or is that the work that he's done this off season with Duke Manyweather? And the whole of the Dallas offensive line, even Tyler Biadasz has been working with Duke as well. So the stuff that's been going in during the off season, I don't know, but I mean, I think we've lost something with Mark Colombo going. Mark Colombo, I don't know what he's doing now, because obviously he wasn't with the Giants this year. He got canned halfway through the year, much like Garrett got canned. Now the whole thing about Dak not being worth the money. I mean, going into this year, a lot of NFL pundits were saying that this is the year that we were going to see Danny Jones coming through and taking that step up and leading the Giants. I actually said one of the NFL Scotland nights at the start of the season, I said that Danny Jones wouldn't, or the Giants wouldn't have as good. It would be the second best team in New York, and at the moment both teams are 4-12, and I think Zach Wilson's actually got more wins than Danny Jones has. Obviously, Danny's been injured, but I said he wasn't going to be the best QB in New York, and quite frankly, at the moment, there is a case to argue about that. So I think, yes, Dak isn't of the level of Aaron Rodgers, but who is? Tom Brady? No. Pat Mahomes this year, for all his $500 million contract over the next 8-9 years, he's been shown to. There is kryptonite, or there is a chink of kryptonite that can get into his armor.
Why is the only one getting confused? You see Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady getting confused. We always find an excuse for him. Sorry, guys, I'm not here now. I'm just frustrated. Right? Yeah, that's genuine. That's genuine frustration. So, I'm gonna encapsulate a couple of things here as best I can. So, the easy thing to do, and it makes complete sense, is to pin everything on, or a lot of things on, the quarterback, because a lot of things look like they are the quarterback's fault, because the quarterback touches the ball every offensive snap. They are fair points. What you need to understand is that everything starts and stops with the first person who touches the ball, or the unit that they're a member of, and that's the offensive line. Everything starts and stops in the trenches. Now, when you have players like Zach Martin getting walked up on to the point he's past vertical, he's backwards, he's doing backstroke, he's getting walked backwards into Dak Prescott, forcing Dak Prescott to throw early, and he threw it the last second, to the point I even thought the ball was tipped on this play, and I went back and I made a point of saying to you, Brian, and I went back and watched it. And I thought it was, and it wasn't until afterwards when I eventually saw the replay, I saw it wasn't tipped, but it very nearly was. And that is the play on their first visit to the end zone. He missed the throw to Coop, which a lot of people are saying he should have had Coop. Coop is wide open. Now, that's a fair assessment. You can say in one breath, come on now, Dak, you're a 6-year veteran, like you just said. You need to be making that throw regardless of if you got pressure in your face. Okay, that's a fair point. What is also a fair point is he has pressure in his face. His receiver is not far enough through his route yet. He's not going to be able to make that catch. Amari Cooper was trying to catch it a yard or two out of step, horizontally almost. He was almost at a 45-degree angle. He was nowhere close to being made to do it. Dak left it till the last second to throw that, hopefully put it in a position where his receiver could get it. And he was off the mark. can you really hold it against him, hand on heart, and say, you're really not the person to be leading this franchise when he's done everything he can there? Go to another play. Running style play now, which is the one that Lorne alluded to earlier. I think it was actually a short pass rather than an actual handoff to Zeke, I believe it was.
Yeah.
In fact, it was where it was a run. Short pass. It was where Zeke broke out the middle of the pack, and then bared right, and it's where Lyle Collins tackled blocked Sprinkle, and the one person who was left free was the person that tackled Zeke. Now, yes, there was Zeke was bobbling the ball. Now you can put that on Dak, you can put that on Zeke. It's one of the two. But those one of those things where it happens in a ball game. He collected the ball. Arguably, if he gets that pass, he still probably makes the first down because it was a short yardage situation. But when you get so many things like that coupling together, it's never going to end well. So you had that block there. You had Zach Martin getting walked up on. To bring in another person who is not an offensive lineman but still blocks. You have, what was it? It was on another run play out to the left. This was an actual handoff. And Dalton Schultz got fucked around.
Yep.
Got shot right past him. And yeah, Dak went down. Or ended up having to throw the ball out. I can't remember what the result was. But he got to Dak. I remember it from the callback. It was his first play, and Troy said, if the Arizona Cardinals are going to have any chance of winning, we're going to have to hear his name a lot more tonight, and they did, because he wasn't getting blocked well, and that's why he had an effect, and that's the effect you saw was incomplete passes. Dak is actually very good against pressure. He's actually statistically good against pressure. He's one of the best in the league. But no one is perfect. And when you have an offensive line that literally is not doing a single thing right, your tight end's not blocking well enough to boot, then when they're meant to be picking up blitzes, you can't establish a run. You can't let your route trees develop, even on the underneath routes. You're not going to have very much luck. And it's unfair to pin that on your quarterback. Now, don't get me wrong. He missed throws. He made mistakes. Yes.
Yeah.
My point is, and I'm not trying to absolve Dak of all blame here, or the majority of blame. He bears the burden for stuff he gets wrong. And part of the burden for stuff that is partly his fault, as is right. But people seem to be forgetting or not realizing there is a lot more to these situations than just Dak. And people want Dak to be someone he's not. If you want a quarterback that can carry a team irrespective of the team being not that great and having some issues, and not having things click, you need to go start supporting Green Bay, because that's pretty much the only guy that can do it right now. There's very few quarterbacks that can do that in the history of the NFL and have done it. And there's only really one, I think, that you can argue that can do it right now.
Yeah.
Your best blocker of the night was Zeke.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yep.
And I think, to be fair to Joe, he has come back in here and said, look, he said, you don't, in terms of, he's not trying to blame Dak, and it feeds into a point I kind of made on Sunday night. Kellen Moore is Scott Linehan disciple, and at times on Sunday it looked like Kellen Moore was calling plays that Scott Linehan called 3 or 4 years ago. Run on first down, don't make any impact, pass on second down, you're in third and long, and it's. He's not using Zeke enough and the running game to open up play action, which will then help Dak. I think that's the frustration that all of us have. I mean, look, we're not trying to compare Dak to Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, two of the greatest quarterbacks, not just now, two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So it's unfair to judge him against that standard. He is very good at what he does, and Andy has kind of come back here and said, he's outperformed the 4th round pick. Yes, he has. We're not doubting that.
He massively has. And I didn't want to, I'll apologize if it seemed like I'm coming at you there, Joe. That wasn't my intention, and I wasn't trying to say that's what you're doing, is trying to pin it all on Dak.
Yeah.
My overall point was a lot of people have been doing that. Not necessarily you specifically, but a lot of people have been, or have been apportioning, I believe, too much of that blame onto Dak. rather than sharing it out the way I believe personally, and this is my opinion, that it should be. That's my overall point, basically. But he does bring a very good point. But then at the same time, Kellen can call run play after run play after run play after run play, whether it's a handoff or a short pass.
Yeah.
If your line's not blocking and not getting stuff done right, it's still not going to work. You're going to have exactly the same problem, you're just not passing. Yep. You're still one-dimensional, just in the opposite way. Because you're just making it slightly easier because they know you're going to run it every play.
Yeah.
You need at some point to have players execute, and when Zach Martin's not executing to the point he's getting walked up on, Lyle Collins isn't executing, Dalton Schultz, who's your best blocking tight end, isn't executing, Tyron Smith is giving away penalties, and I can kind of give him a bit of a pass because it's his first game back after a minute. When you can turn around and say that you're on a line with those guys and your best player is Terrence Steele and your best blocker was Zeke and your best run is your quarterback, like, really? That's not a good place. That's indicative and symptomatic of your line's not playing in any way well.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm a big college football guy, and I did watch a lot of college football over the last week in particular. And I did watch a good bit of NFL as well on Sunday. And what I found with the offensive line is they're very static. There's very little dynamism with them. There's very few pull plays where, Tyron and Connor are going to the right-hand side, or Zach Martin is coming around and Lyle Collins is coming around to the left side. It seems to be a very vanilla run playbook. There's nothing exciting about it. And for me, look, that's part of the offensive line. But the question I now have is Kellen Moore the offensive coordinator of this team next year?
That's a good question. To be honest, I think we need to just turn around and see what happens in the offseason. I think if he doesn't want to go anywhere, he probably stays. It's probably, I'd say, his last year if he does. I'd say it will be his last year if he does, unless he performs very well. Much different. Regards to you said about the plays in seemingly in the playbook for run plays, there's definitely been a shift from those kinds of plays that they used to run previously when Zeke was a rookie, and lesser so, but still in his second year. There's been a shift away from that to more towards short passes and offloads, and Zeke moving towards Zeke being a good catcher, because he is. But I think they're trying to use that too much. And I think if they, with this 1-2 punch that they have now, if they could get back to that, then it would be really good, because it's weird not seeing Zach Martin doing things like that when we used to see him do it.
And I would actually say that the start of this season, before we made the change to Connor McGovern, I would say we were doing a lot of pulling. And then we went to Connor McGovern, and obviously McGovern was having difficulty with being on the left-hand side. And something, I don't know if it was, there's been talk that, yes, Kellen's gone to a more vanilla playbook these last 4 or 5 weeks when we have been struggling on offense. Gone to vanilla because he doesn't want to tip his hand for the playoff. But then you could counter that with, well, why do that trick play with Cedric Wilson? With the sort of the flea, it was almost a flea flicker type pass. Why would you do that? But I suppose that's just keeping something for everybody to consider.
And I suppose you try and disguise that at the same time, if that is what you're trying to do. But then at the same time, like I said earlier, you've got to then, if you're only doing the simple vanilla shit, there's no excuse not to execute it. That's what worries me.
Joe has come in again with a couple of great points. He said that he hopes that Kellen Moore is not with us next season, and he'll drive Kellen Moore to Virginia, and that he'd rather lose me than keep Dan Quinn. I think we all agree with that.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah.
And Andy makes an interesting point. I wouldn't agree with this point, but look, I'll throw it to both of you. Will McCarthy even be head coach for one and done in the playoffs?
Ooh.
It depends how. If we're one and done, it depends how the game goes. If it turns into a shootout, and we are attacking the ball, and it just again comes down to one play here or there, I could see McCarthy having a statement that obviously was given the mulligan for last year. Again, who would have thought we would turn around from a 6-win team last year to what 11 wins this
11
year,
or 12.
You can say, and I mean, obviously Philadelphia have guaranteed themselves a playoff spot. So, the NFC East hasn't been as weak this year. I mean, the fact that Washington were still in it a couple of weeks ago as well.
They've only, to the weekend.
In fact, up to the weekend, they've only just been eliminated from playoff contention. So we're probably the second strongest NFC division this year. It's not the NFC least this year, but if it turns out to be a blowout loss, or we haven't corrected anything at all, McCarthy could be gone.
Rich,
potential's there. I very much am in the camp of I like to give my head coaches a decent amount of years to get what they want implemented with the personnel they want set. But they could be a victim of their own success here because of what they've managed to do through the draft, specifically on the defense this year. Now, can you fire a head coach if you go one and done in the playoffs, but previously we had the season that we did? And we're not counting the year before. So you say from one season, coaches taken over and has gotten a terrible team to the playoffs the following year. That's not a bad body of work. I would say the bit where I think they may be a victim of their success is I think he's definitely... I think I'm comfortable saying he's probably around for 1 year, unless they have an absolute meltdown in the playoffs. I think he's still around. I think that he's probably got 1 year left in him because of how much they've managed to build. If they don't manage to sort the line out and sort the run game out and sort the offense out, then, and Kellen Moore is still here, I think it's definitely going to be a question of, does Kellen Moore go or does Mike McCarthy go? Or do both of them go? I think it could be one or the other.
For me, look, I think it's not that I don't want to say it's a stupid question because there's no stupid questions. I think it would be a silly move to remove Mike McCarthy. There was a stat at the weekend that of the current head coaches in the NFL who have had 10 plus winning seasons, 10 game winning seasons, you have Belichick obviously on top of that list. I think it's Pete Carroll is next, and then you have Mike Tomlin, Sean Payton, Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy guarantees 10 plus win seasons. So why would you remove him as your head coach? That's what we want from this organization. We've bounced around 13, 8, 6, 4, 12. We want to be consistent in that range. But it does bring up the question, as Paul has asked, who do you bring in? Because for me, I'm not turning this team over to Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore has not shown me anything to suggest he should be or could be head coach of this organization. So is that just me, or would you both have the same opinion?
I mean, the thing is, you'll never know what you have until you give it a try. I mean, the whole bringing Jason Garrett in and having him being the offensive coordinator, there was all the talk at the time. Wade Phillips had a gun to his head half the time, I think, because basically people were looking, Jason Garrett's obviously the heir apparent, all this sort of thing. We've had that to an extent this year with Kellen Moore. It's maybe died off a little bit now, but obviously Kellen has had the he's already had the Jaguars coming in and asking to interview him. Similarly, I don't know. Would you want Dan Quinn being moved up to head coach? Because obviously, again, you've had proof of what he can do. And okay, yes, much like McCarthy, Dan Quinn has taken a team to the Super Bowl. Now, again, like Dan Reeves, unfortunately, he didn't get to the Super Bowl. He didn't win the Super Bowl, even though he was up 28-3 at halftime. And you could say he was out coached by the mass, the evil empire. Belichick.
He and the hoodie.
Yep, he and the hoodie. But do you want him stepping up, or do you think he is just, he's found his level, that he is a defensive coordinator and that's where he should stay? Anybody that you could even say that having McCarthy, yes, he's had 10-win seasons, but in the same way where people were saying, is Belichick the master, or was it because of what Brady had? You could say the same thing about McCarthy, because he had the tail end of Brett Favre. He then had Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had 2-3 years to sit, watch Brett Favre, came in, he was, and those mental reps, even though they maybe didn't get on, and Brett Favre wasn't tutoring Aaron Rodgers probably the way he should, because obviously much the same way that there's all this stuff about Jordan Love, that there's no love lost between him and Aaron Rodgers. What's going to happen for them when Aaron Rodgers does ride off into the sunset? What are Green Bay going to be like? Could the fact that Mike McCarthy was a regular 10-win season winner, is that because he had Aaron Rodgers? Now.
It is a good point that you're making there, Lauren, in terms of the quarterback. But you also have to have coaches who put you in position to win those games, and you have to have systems which put you in positions to win those games. I'll be interested to see, because I think Rodgers is going to leave Green Bay next year, or in this upcoming off season. So it'll be interesting to see what Green Bay do next year. If Green Bay keep rolling and keep doing what they've been doing consistently for 20 or 30 years at this stage, and you could probably track it all the way back to pre-Super Bowl era, in winning 10, 12, 13 games a season. Yeah, it shows they have had two of the best quarterbacks in Favre and Rodgers. But if they're still winning 10 games a season with Jordan Love, it shows it's really the system. But we're nearly an hour into the show, and I did want to bring up one point, and this has been a consistent point for McCarthy all year. It's his poor time management and decisions could cost us. And it did cost us last weekend, because we had to call 3 timeouts before the 2-minute mark, and we lost a very obvious fumble, which we couldn't challenge because we'd no timeouts left inside 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, the one thing I would say about that is, the one thing I don't like about the instant replay is that on a potential, whether it was a turnover or not, I mean, that is something that should be looked at, because it has a bearing on the game. And it shouldn't be up, no matter when, that should be something that is reviewed by upstairs at all points, because it's done in the NCAA, it's done in the CFL. Anything that's could constitute a turnover should be looked at. And obviously the two big turnovers that we probably should have had this season, the Raiders game where, obviously what was, did he make a football move before he fumbled, and then, we made that spectacular sideline recovery. And then this one as well was from DeMarcus Lawrence has put out a tweet with a screenshot of it. His wrist was down, but there was no forearm of his free hand and everything like that. The ball was coming out at that point in time as well.
Yeah.
That was trying to show that it's a fumble. Now, but the thing is, the referees made the decision on the field that it wasn't a fumble, so they couldn't review it. They couldn't review it themselves. McCarthy would have had to throw the red flag. Obviously, the play where they lined up with Kyler Murray on the outside, the kicker at the line of scrimmage, forcing McCarthy to burn a timeout there. And obviously, we then had to use timeouts elsewhere as well. That had an effect on the game. You can't on that particular play. I can't fault him for making that call and making a timeout.
Yeah, it was the right call.
Now, there was one as well where Dak was trying to check out of three different. He checked out of one thing. The defense switched. He had to check out at that point as well. And, to avoid a delay of game, we had to call another timeout there. That's something that's where I have the issue with. And that's not McCarthy. That's on the field. That's the call of Dak. And the offense, they should just pick a play. And, if you get back to the line of scrimmage, great, you can work on that. If it, as long as it's not, it doesn't end up with Dak lying on the floor 7 yards back, and rolling on his ankle again, it's maybe best just to go with what you've called once and stick with that, so that you're not burning timeouts there. You can't really complain about the officials, and what struck me was that Mike McCarthy was quite vocal in the press conference after calling out the officials. He's going to end up with a FedEx envelope this week. Dak, I think, argued about the officials, and Zach argued about the officials. They're going to get a FedEx envelope this week saying that money's been taken off their paycheck this week, because they just cannot come out and publicly berate the officials. The NFL does not like that. It has to go. The only people that can comment on that is somebody like Stephen, and that's in the appropriate channels, which is the competition committee. They can't. Stephen wouldn't say anything on 105.3. I think Jerry had basically called the penalties ticky tack. And yes, I mean, we all discussed that on these defensive pass interference calls, both sides had. In the second half, we said that that was a pretty weak call for defensive pass interference or what have you. But that's the way those officials call the game. There's no, we don't have artificial intelligence that can just call the game 100% the same way all the time. The referees have got their own intricacies, and you just have to live with that. And every game you could say one team could say they got screwed by the referees. And look, whether it's no matter what game sport it is, football, baseball, whatever.
I disagree there.
Go on, Rich.
I disagree with that, because very rarely do I watch even the local one, let alone an international game. Specifically rugby I'm talking about now. Rugby union, not league, Jamie, because that's for boys.
For girls, Rich.
For girls. Our little boys too, that's fine. Anyway.
Little boys like Jamie.
Very rarely do I watch a rugby union match, an international match, and can I genuinely put my hand on my heart and say X team got screwed over, whether it's mine or another team. It never really happens. Don't get me wrong, there's missed calls and all the rest of it, and there is the human element of it, but I think there is becoming and I'm very firmly in the camp of, no matter what happens in a game, I don't like pinning blame on officiating crews, because I think it is weak. It is very low hanging fruit. It is a very weak excuse and a get out clause for you not doing your shit properly. At the end of the day, there are a lot more snaps in a game that you can do right that can get you past even a lot of very bad calls. Now, yes, they can come at the worst possible time, but if you're playing well enough, you can get past that. At the end of the day, you've got to play well enough. But I do think it's a bit silly in the NFL lately. I do think it's getting worse and worse. I do think there is a genuine argument now to link the two together. My 2 points there about rugby and American football is that in rugby, obviously you have the video ref up in the booth, basically who is a secondary ref running behind.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of times you see it in rugby, for anyone who's watching who doesn't watch rugby, if you have a play that's missed. So in the NFL, you'll have something that happens, and like with the weekend, it gets put on the screen, the crowd sees it, they go crazy because they've seen something, because something has happened and it's been missed on the field. Genuine human error, can't do anything about it. They can't be seeing absolutely everything all the time. It's fair. But you have a video referee up in the booth that is watching everything, basically watching the live feed, and has all these other angles and everything else that you get as well. And they'll go back and rewatch that. And if they find something, they will turn around to the referee, get him on the comms and say, I think you've missed something here. I'm going to play you something on the big screen so you can see it. And you see what I see, and now tell me you're still happy to make the same call. And if you are happy to make the same call and keep it as it is, then that's perfectly fine. You are the referee. You are making the calls. I just want to make sure you have all the information to make that correct call. And that is the system that I think the NFL is sorely needing, because I think that will iron out a lot of problems that we see week in, week out. Because a lot of things we see week in, week out are these types of plays where things come up and it's on the video feed, it's on the TV feed, and it's not seen. And I get that it's the rules of the game. I get that it's not rugby. Rules can be changed for the better. The fans want games better officiated. The players want games better officiated. The front offices want games better officiated. The officials want games better officiated. If it's going to benefit everyone, there is no harm. There's no problem in genuinely improving something if it needs improvement. And I think the league needs to identify the fact that it does need a degree of improvement, and there are things that can be done to improve it. I think they've gone some way to doing it previously, but not far enough. Now, like I said before, I kind of don't like the excuse of going against the refs, and I don't like when players and coaches come out and say it publicly. But even I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, well, yeah, do it properly, do the proper channels for the competition committee, but that's not getting it done. People are going to get pissed off and they're going to start saying stuff. Maybe players should start banding together. Maybe the NFLPA should turn around and start doing stuff and saying, you better start calling these games right, or something else is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because if players keep thinking they're getting seen off and the coaches are on board with it, you've got a big problem.
Yeah. Like, I'll just finish this point off and we'll move on to the defense. We're now 10 minutes in. Blaming referees is a poor excuse because you have a week to prepare for the refereeing and officiating crew. You know who's coming. You know what their tendencies are. It is your problem to sort out for yourself. As Rich says, we watch a lot of rugby here in the UK and Ireland, and teams at that level, at club level, will study the tendencies of the referees. The referees will talk to them before the game and say, these are things I'm going to pull you on, guys. You have the warning, so don't do it. So it's a weak excuse to blame a referee. But I think, like refereeing in every sport, it's the consistency which is really upsetting the players, because last week, I think there were 3 penalties in the whole game between Washington and ourselves. This weekend, there was 15 penalties, I think I counted, in the game. You know, you have some crews which are going to let teams play, some crews don't let teams play, and it's killing the game. And feeds into the point, Rich, as you made, and Lauren, you've made it as well, is that the players are just annoyed because they cannot have consistency. 1 week, you're grabbing a guy at a shoulder pad, a team lets it away, and another week it doesn't. So, look, we'll leave it at that. As we say, we're nearly an hour and 15 minutes into the show. Let's talk. So, defense, I think, to be fair, the defense had a decent game at the weekend. Some of the stats are going down the bottom there. I think they held up reasonably well, but they weren't able to contain Kyler Murray at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and yes, they gave up big plays, particularly on that first drive. Obviously, Arizona got down to, what was it, a 3-yard line. You thought, oh, God, here we go. We're in for a long day. They stiffened. Arizona had to come away with a field goal. I think, obviously, what was maybe a killer for us slightly was, obviously, they got a field goal before the end of the first half, because again, our offense was non-existent. They got a field goal. They then got the ball back. That basically turned it around. They ended up with, obviously 19-7. They missed out on the 2 extra point on that first drive of the second half, and then it's got a little bit of time on it, but and I don't think the time of possession I don't think there was a great gulf in the time of possession, but Arizona had
nearly 10 minutes.
Was it in the end? There was, but I mean,
yeah.
Arizona had a very long drive in that first half, and you thought, Jesus Christ, if the offense, have Dallas's offense been on the field for any time? And it was actually quite strange that at halftime, Dallas had actually had the bulk of the, they'd had 15 minutes and 18 seconds or whatever, and the Cardinals had the lesser amount of that. Now, we were giving Murray fits. Murray was constantly having to run, doing off scrambling, and obviously we were just, when Murray can put the afterburners on, very few people can catch him. But we were doing good things, when Micah Parsons wasn't rushing, he was actually playing spy, and we were controlling Murray. When he was pass rushing, that's when Murray was getting out, and he couldn't compete with anybody else. I think defensively, I think what purely happened was that they were out on the field for far too long. Guys like Randy Gregory were having to come off because they picked up knocks, again, probably because fatigue was setting in. When you're tired, that's when you don't do something right, you don't plant right, and then you get a little niggle, and that makes you have to come off and get your boot restrapped or whatever. I think that's where we started failing there. But I mean, how often would it be if we only, in the Garrett era, if we'd only given up 25 points, you could say, well, as long as our offense scores over 25 points, we're going to win that. It should have been. I think the defense did an admirable job. Yeah, they were leaky at times, but you're going to give up plays against a team of that caliber. What's concerning is, obviously, they didn't have DeAndre Hopkins, they didn't have James Conner. The running back wasn't getting anywhere much of the time, other than sneaking out on little passes. And when he had the space, he was getting there. But our run defense was controlling them. Murray was the one that was doing the damage. And if they get these guys back for the playoffs, and we're having to face them in the playoffs, then that's going to put even more pressure on our defense. And consistently, that's going to put it on the offense as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very, very well out-schemed by the Cardinals. The Cardinals did a very good job of using this defense's tendencies against them, the aggressiveness. The Cowboys didn't adapt as well as I think they could have. They did do a very admirable job. They did do very well, and they put them in position to win this game with the offense not being as good as it should have been. They also did a very, very good job of keeping Micah Parsons very quiet, and that's not helped when players like Jordan Lewis miss their blocks, or don't pick people up, or don't make their tackles. Because there's a block Jordan Lewis should have had on, I believe, the second drive in the first quarter, where they had the running back come in and they had the two big chunk plays back to back. Pretty sure it was the second one. Jordan Lewis missed his block. Defensive lineman came through, and his sole job was to take out Micah Parsons. And he did a damn good job of it. It wasn't a defensive lineman, obviously, it was a lineman, but he did his job very, very well.
Yeah.
They contained Micah Parsons pretty well, be it either with personnel or by scheme, containing him within a body of people to keep him away from what was happening. They did a very, very good job.
Yeah. Like, I think we kind of discussed this amongst ourselves in the group on Sunday during the game, was that the Cardinals seem to use the aggressiveness of this defense against them. I think in terms, as we say, Micah being a bit too aggressive, and then they were able to get short ones. And David made the point here that, sorry, I'm just trying to bring it up, that on the big play that Trayvon gave up, that he bites too easy on routes, and he gets interceptions, but it does give up a lot of yards, which it does. That Arizona actually used what have sometimes been strengths against us in this game.
100%. That, but specifically the point on Diggs, that big chunk play on the first drive that, like you said, put him right down.
Yeah.
In a first and goal situation, and exactly that happened. He bit too early on a route. You can see him there. He's taking that. He's backpedaling. He's with his guy, and he's not sure. There's a point. He's not sure where Kyler Murray's going to the ball. He's not sure if it's the guy that's level / just past him, and if he's got to turn and escape, or if he's half turned because he's not sure which way he's going, or if he's going the underneath route in front of him through someone who isn't blocked. And he takes a step forward and goes, crap, it's not him, it's him. And now he's chasing AJ Green back down the field, and he's out of position, and the catch is made. That is exactly what happens. But, like I said, the guy wasn't blocked. If he was blocked, he probably makes that play. That may be a repeat of the Washington game.
Yeah.
Now that's a shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's one of those kind of situations, but it's a valid point to make.
Yeah, it's a small point at the start of the game, which, as you say, could have been a big point in the ending of it.
Yeah, and it's a valid criticism of Diggs. It is a very valid criticism of Diggs, and a lot of people make it. They say, "Yeah, he's a bullhook."
Yeah,
and people are using his tendencies against it, which is why he has his interceptions. Because he gets targeted, because he plays it like a wide receiver, because that's ultimately what he is. It's what he's used to, which is fair. However, as I said before, if we're going to look at this and critique it as a whole, this whole body of work, and apportion blame appropriately, then let's do it appropriately. Let's do it evenly. Because if that guy wasn't blocked, Diggs has only got to worry about one person. That said, this is the NFL. Multiple people are going to be free. Diggs has got to learn to read that situation. You've got to learn, cover the deep guy. We can deal with that one. Let's worry about this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, what you got to think of as well is, who would you rather have as a cornerback? And you can probably work out who the two options I'm going to give here. Would you like a guy who makes a lot of interceptions but does get burnt? Or would you prefer to have a guy who lets the receiver catch the ball but is a sure-handed tackler? Will sometimes obviously break up passes but doesn't get the interceptions.
Because I'm guessing the second guy you were talking about was Byron Jones, was it?
Yep.
And to be fair, I think in his last season with us, people avoided Byron Jones, which is ultimately what you want from your cornerback, is that they don't throw to that side of the field. But I think just flicking it back to Diggs, and a lot of people got on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, and were going hard at Trayvon and saying, he's giving up yards, he's not a good cornerback.
Yeah.
People need to remember, Trayvon Diggs is only playing cornerback the last 5 years. He's a converted wide receiver who's playing in his second season in the NFL. AJ Green is playing, his 12th or 13th season in the NFL. And he did him. Absolutely did him all day long. And Trayvon's only going to learn from that and get better. You can't, as Lauren said, what do you want? Do you want the flash plays where you have a guy getting an interception? Or do you want the steady, sure-handed guy who's not getting targeted or who's making all his tackles? Pick your poison, folks. A point that is brought up, and sorry, Joe just said that Brown played better than Diggs against Arizona. Absolutely he did. There's no debating that. Given that we were light, very, very light at one stage at linebacker, I think we made a big mistake letting Jalen Smith go because it's hurting us right now. I'm not sure on that point.
No.
I think they did the right thing in moving on from Jalen.
Yeah.
His production and the fact he didn't stick in Green Bay, he hasn't stuck in New York either. Jalen Smith is done at this level. And if you had him for the last 10 weeks or however long it was ago since he was cut, you would have a guy who you would need to be putting on the field and giving snap counts to given his paycheck. And we would have had a lot worse results. This defense has gotten immeasurably better since he has left.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yes, we were light at linebacker, and it showed
100%.
because we had very little steady and sure this weekend in that intermediate, in that second sector of the field. So take it away.
I completely agree. I don't understand what I don't believe Jalen would have added anything to him. He seems like a really nice guy, really great stand-up guy, and he's a good player. But I don't think he would have added anything in that situation. And if he's not going to add anything, and you're not missing him by him not being there, then what's the point in having him there? If you're going to have someone there as a tick box exercise just to say, we have a fourth linebacker, well, they signed someone specifically to do that, and he didn't make the starting roster. So they clearly weren't that bothered about it. They were happy to roll with 3 because it shows what they were concerned about in terms of where they were concerned about the Cardinals would go with the ball and how they would play. So I don't think it's a loss personally in terms of the Cowboys as a football team, in terms of their productivity on the field. Defensively, I do not think it's a loss.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, yeah, he still is actually on the Giants roster at the moment, but the fact that he, in the 3 games that he played for Green Bay, I mean, how often did one of us post to our wee group saying that, oh, look, there he is, he's whiffing on a tackle, the guys just sidestepped him without even having to jump over a trailing arm or something like that. If he was balling out in Green Bay, who were desperate for linebackers at that point in time, and Green Bay's defense had suddenly improved, exponentially, I would say, yeah, we made the mistake. But I certainly wouldn't have taken the risk. All it would take would be, a cracked toenail, and you could say that Jalen Smith goes for a mani-pedi at the end of the year, and they say, oh, you need to do this. And, that would constitute being an injury that he's picked up during the game. And, that there you go, he's on the hook. We're on the hook for 9.2 million. And you think I'm being flippant with that, but it can be just something slightly more than that. But it can be something like that, and it automatically activates that clause in your contract. They tried to get him to renegotiate. He wouldn't. I think his agents did an absolute fantastic job actually getting that clause in the contract in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Why Jerry agreed to that is surprising to me, but
and look, before we do move on any further, Joe, it looks like we're picking on you a lot tonight. We're not.
We're not picking on you.
We know the fact that you're interacting and asking questions, because
100%.
These are questions everybody is asking. So we're the three of us are giving you our opinion on things, and we all agree everyone is entitled to their opinion on things, and without you, we can't have these kinds of discussions. So, keep them coming in. You do add in plenty of good commentary as well, that we do agree with. So, it's great to have that back and forth on things with everybody. And it's not just Joe, it's Andy and everyone else who's contributing to the show. We're just going to have a quick discussion because, again, there was a special teams issue at the weekend. So I'm just going to bring up the facts. Greg Zuerlein missed a field goal.
3 points.
Discuss. 3 points, yes.
3 points that could have been very useful.
Yes.
I am very much devil's advocate with this, because on one hand, I could very easily turn around and say, this roster, with how talented it is, should not be worrying about a missed field goal. You should be able to win a game with a missed field goal. You shouldn't have to worry about that. But at the same time, can you forgive a kicker who misses kicks like that? Who, what was it? They've had, how many games is it they've had? They've lost a couple of games, I think, by a total of 8 points. And in the season, he's left something like 14 on the field through missed kicks.
Yep.
And people saying kicks should be automatic. Yes and no. I think pats should be automatic after a fashion, unless it's blocked. You always get the freak one every now and again. I can give 1 or 2 a season, fine, but it happens far too much for my liking. It shouldn't, and I've gone into kick-in before on this show in previous seasons. It's ridiculous. It should be automatic. Points, pats should be automatic. Longer kicks, fair enough. Pats should be near enough. Okay, the kick of the field goal, I'm going to go get a drink, which is horrible to say. But it should be. You should be that confident, like we used to be when we had Dan Bailey. Dan's making a kick. We're about Dan's up. I'm going to go make a brew.
Yeah.
And exactly, very good point. Missed 2 field goals against Tampa Bay, which if you win that game, you make those kicks, you win that game.
Yeah.
Ooh.
You're 12-4.
Yep. I mean, Zuerlein is the 18th best kicker at the moment in the NFL. Yeah. He's got an 82% kick rate this year.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking Tampa Bay. If he'd made 1 field goal, made 1 extra point, again, that's changing. It could be we gave Tom Brady too much time, but again, it's it changes what the opposition need to do and it maybe changes their mindset. that is a concern when you're not getting consistency, and it seems and at the time Zerling came through and we had the walk-off field goal against the Chargers the following week. So he has kicked well for us in some respects, but just I don't know if there's something because of his injury that he had in pre-season. I wouldn't be surprised if you're seeing he has more surgery during the off-season this year. Unfortunately, he's got a guaranteed contract at the moment still, and I think he's still guaranteed for next year. And it drops off a little bit, and I think we could probably make the cut. But I mean, we saw enough out of Liram Hairalaju that he's now signed on with Carolina, I think it is. So he did enough in his exhibition with us that he's managed to garner a place in the league. We need to be able to rely on them. We don't need to come up and say, and invariably he misses the first kick and then he corrects everything. But one of those the extra point where we'd initially gone for 2, we jumped off sides or whatever, and we got pushed back 5 yards, and then so it then does become, and then we decided to go for a 1, so it then became it became almost like what was it? It's a 35-yard field goal, I think it is, with that extra 38 with the extra 5 yards. That then it has been questionable whether he can make that, and he did just curl it in through the post as well. So there's something that's leading him to kicking off to one side. Brett Maher's still got a job in this league at the moment. Now that just goes to show how bad. At the moment, who is it? Tucker and Harrison Butker are the only ones that are performing consistently. Kicking is going down across the league anyway. But we really need to. We do need to be able to rely on it, because otherwise you're going to end up having to punt in situations where you don't want to be punting. And great, we've got a great punter in Brian Anger, but you need to be able to rely on your getting points if your offense can't convert. So
100%. Well, not even that. It's when they do convert, because you look at playoff football, it's going to be very tight. Ideally, you're probably, or realistically rather, you're probably going to be trading touchdowns for a large portion of the game. You're going to be trading those 7 points back and forth, but you need to get that 7th point. You need someone to make those kicks, and oftentimes those sorts of games, those hard slog games, it's going to be decided by a field goal or 2. And the Cowboys have shown that in regular season this year. Like I haven't got the exact statistic, but like I said, there's games we've lost, and it's been multiple games, more than 2, that we've lost by a total of 8 points, and he's left 14 on the field, and that's from pats and penalties. When you get games that are decided by kicks or just scores kept to put the offense in a position to win it, you need the kicker to do his job. You need to be scoring points, and if you're missing pads, it's inexcusable.
Yeah, you look at the Bears playoff run in 2018, went down to a double doink kick that came off both the crossbar and the one of the other bars. It was a double doink, and had they converted that, could they have gone on? Could they, as it happens, I think that was a turning point for their franchise. They lost a lot of players, and then they've been in the doldrums. They've picked up Justin Fields this year. They've been the Bears. Other teams, something as minuscule as missing a field goal kick in the playoffs because you haven't got a consistent kicker can actually turn a team that has we talk about momentum and building it up. That momentum, if you lose it, it can actually just completely destroy an organization for the next couple of years. as well, because you end up finishing. If Tampa Bay had missed a kick last year, would all these players come back for them this year? Oh, they first Super Bowl team for 40 years. Well, in the free agency market, where they returned all of their starters because nobody went off anywhere else. Had Tampa Bay, Brady got them to the NFC Championship game, and Aaron Rodgers had been able to go for that touchdown on the last drive, and then it had gone down to Brady, and had Brady missed got them in field goal range and they'd missed the kick, would they have all come back next season to play for Brady? No, I don't think so.
No. And to put it in perspective, obviously you guys know, for anyone that doesn't know, we obviously the admins of UK Cowboys, we have a group chat on Facebook, and obviously we're around during the games. Generally, and you guys can back me up, one of Mike's most common comments, if there's a missed field goal, there's a missed kick, Mike will say something along the lines of, "That could be costly further on in the game." It's one of his favorite things to say. Yeah. And I tell you what, more often than not, he's freaking right.
Yeah.
It's true. But I think I saw a stat after the weekend's games that I think there's 14 teams in the playoffs this year. And of those 14 teams, I think Zerline is statistically the worst ranked kicker of all 14 teams. That, if you look at the names, as you said, Harrison Butker, Tyler Bass at Buffalo, who else is there? Mason Crosby, who's had a down year but is a consistent kicker. Ryan Suckup has been a great kicker this year for the Bucks. If you go down through, you will see that those kickers are pretty long tenured. They're very, very accurate and very consistent, and they don't tend to leave the team. It's something that needs to be sorted out in this off-season.
Yep.
We're nearly an hour and 40 minutes in, so I will pass it over to you, gentlemen, if there is anything else you want to say before we pay the bills.
No.
Cowboys going Super Bowl.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So as I say, before we go, we will pay the bills. And Rich, if you want to give a shout out to Barry and the team over at Cowboys Experience.
Oh, I've never done this before. I think I've done this once before and I was terrible. Oh God. Right. There's not really much point in it this year, really, but if you are heading over for the playoffs, or obviously next year, you want to have a good time, head up our guys at Cowboys Experience. They will treat you like absolute royalty. Just head over to the website. When you're booking everything, use the discount code UK Cowboys. You see it right there. If you do that, you will get treated like royalty. There's loads of extra stuff, meet and greets, a little bit of VIP treatment here and there, if you know what I'm saying. It's brilliant. It is genuinely top quality. And if you don't, I will hate you forever, because it is free stuff at the end of the day. And I hate people who don't take free stuff. It's you got to do nothing. You got to do nothing. You may as well just say, I'm not going to hate Philly, because that's free. That's one of life's greatest two of life's greatest gifts right there, is hating on Philly, which we're going to be doing a lot of this weekend, and getting free stuff. Don't be a clown. Get free stuff.
Hold on 1 second, Rich. Now that we're back to you, give us the line.
I just said, don't be a clown. Use the code. Get free stuff.
There we go. And Lauren, if you want to give a shout out to our fellow content creators and friends.
Yeah. So if you're bored of a day, I would heartily suggest you listen to half of these guys. I mean, obviously you've got all the Cowboys own media podcasts, The Break, Talking Cowboys, Hanging with the Boys. Check out Blogging the Boys as well. Obviously we have guests on from Meg and Kelsey Charles from the Girls Talking Boys podcast. Neil Reynolds, Coffee with a Coach, Star Gang, Laws Nation, all these guys are great listens to it, and they'll help you pass the day and help build up your education as well.
Mm-hmm. So make sure and give them all
we
follow.
actually agreed. We actually agreed a fair amount in that, Joe. You even came back and said we agreed a fair amount. There's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with a bit of friendly debate. Nothing wrong with that. As long as we equally hate Philly, that's fine with me.
There we go. As we say, Joe, we weren't trying to pick on you in any way. It's just great to have these conversations because this is what everyone in Cowboys Nation is having conversations about. So
he made good points. He got involved. Get involved. Make good points. We'll pick on you for a change. It's like the front row at a comedy club, but less funny.
But there we go. As always, 9 o'clock on Thursday evening, Mike and the guys will be here to talk about the upcoming game with that team at some dump in Pennsylvania on Saturday night. Don't forget the game is on Saturday night at 1:15 local time here in the UK and Ireland. I think it's 8:15 for all of you on the East Coast of America.
Yeah, that's a funky one.
7:15 in Dallas. Yes.
This gonna be funky, like watching football on Saturday night, like NFL on Saturday night. I'm all for it, man. I'm genuinely looking forward to it because now we're gonna have like a victory Sunday. I'm not gonna be like crazy tired going into work.
Yeah,
it's gonna be awesome.
It's going to be worth it. So, as we say, tune into the guys Thursday evening and enjoy it. It's a good night from me. I'll pass it over to Rich and Lauren.
Yeah, it's a good night from me.
Generally good night from me.
Back to work tomorrow after a long Christmas holiday, so hopefully see you Thursday night if I'm on.
Trick to that, man. Soon. Get yourself COVID. Don't have to go into work.